When you think of Travis Scott's biggest hits, you probably think of songs like Sicko Mode, Goosebumps, or Butterfly Effect. But what if I told you that behind nearly every one of Travis's chart-topping records, there's one producer who's been pulling the strings since day one? In the span of just 8 years, this producer went from being a complete unknown to crafting the sonic blueprint that would turn Travis Scott from a struggling Houston rapper into a $500 million brand. His production credits read like a greatest hits album. He's been sampled by everyone from Kanye to Drake, and he's responsible for some of the most iconic moments in modern hip-hop. Yet somehow, most people still don't know his name. Welcome to Hip Hop Classified. Today, we're going to investigate how one producer became the secret weapon behind Travis Scott's unstoppable rise.
Travis Scott is more than a rapper. He's a cultural disruptor, known for his brutal live shows and genre-bending sound.
When Mike Dean first connected with Travis Scott in 2013, Travis was nobody. He'd been dropped from his first label deal, was sleeping on couches in LA, and was desperately trying to get anyone in the industry to take him seriously. But Mike Dean wasn't just anyone. By 2013, Mike had already spent 2 decades producing for some of the biggest names in hip-hop. We're talking Kanye West, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Tupac, and Scarface. This guy had mixed and mastered some of the most critically acclaimed albums of all time, including Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and A Watch the Throne. So how did a struggling 21-year-old from Houston manage to lock down a legendary producer who worked with literally every major artist in the game? Well, it all comes back to one person, Kanye West. In interviews that surfaced shortly after Rodeo dropped, Mike revealed that Kanye was the one who introduced him to Travis. Kanye had just signed Travis to his Good Music label and needed someone who could help develop this raw talent into something special. Mike Dean was that guy. But here's what makes this story even crazier. Mike didn't just agree to work with Travis for a quick paycheck. He saw something in this kid that nobody else could see yet. According to Mike Dean himself, Travis would show up to the studio with these half-finished ideas, these atmospheric vibes that didn't quite make sense yet. Most producers would have told him to come back when he had something more polished, but Mike Dean did the opposite. He took those chaotic, psychedelic ideas and helped Travis turn them into fully realized songs. To understand why Mike Dean was so crucial to Travis Scott's success, you need to understand what Mike brought to the table that other producers couldn't. Mike Dean isn't just a beat maker, he's a multi-instrumentalist, a mixing engineer, a synthesizer wizard, and arguably one of the best at creating that spacey, atmospheric sound that became Travis's signature. If you listen to Travis Scott's earlier work before Mike Dean, it sounds completely different. His 2012 project Al Faro had some interesting ideas, but it lacked that polished, expansive quality. Then Mike Dean stepped in, and everything changed. Let's talk about Days Before Rodeo, the 2014 mixtape that really put Travis on the map. Mike Dean co-produced and mixed the entire project. Songs like Mamacita, Quintana Part 2, and Skyfall all had Mike's fingerprints on them. The lush synthesizers, the carefully layered vocals, the way the bass hits you right in the chest. These weren't just beats, they were sonic experiences. But here's where it gets interesting. Mike Dean didn't just work on the production, he became Travis's go-to mixing and mastering engineer, which meant he was responsible for how every single element of these songs sounded in the final version. That's a level of trust and creative control that most producers never get, especially with an artist who's just starting to blow up. When Travis Scott dropped his debut album Rodeo on September 4th, 2015, it was immediately clear that this wasn't just another hip-hop album. Critics called it ambitious, cinematic, and genre-defying. Complex ranked it as one of the best albums of the year. Pitchfork gave it a 7.6, but what most people didn't realize was that Mike Dean was all over this project. Mike Dean had production credits on 11 out of the 13 tracks on Rodeo. Think about that for a second. This legendary producer who could be working with anyone he wanted dedicated an entire year of his life to making sure Travis Scott's debut album was perfect. Songs like 3500, Oh My Diss Side, 90210, and Antidote all featured Mike's signature sound, those soaring synthesizers, the perfectly mixed ad-libs, the way every element had space to breathe. And let's talk about Antidote for a second, because that song is a perfect example of Mike Dean's genius. On the surface, it's a club banger with a catchy hook, but listen closer and you'll hear the intricate layering, the way the beat switches up halfway through, the subtle details that make you want to replay it over and over. Mike Dean mixed that record, and it became Travis's first top 20 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 16. What makes things even more crazy is that Mike Dean wasn't getting the credit he deserved. While Travis was doing interviews and magazine covers, Mike was in the background, fine-tuning every detail. In a Reddit AMA, Mike revealed that he would spend 16-hour days in the studio with Travis, often sleeping on the studio couch just to be ready when inspiration struck. So what was it about Mike Dean's approach that took Travis from a promising newcomer to a legitimate superstar? Well, according to multiple interviews, Mike treated Travis's albums like film scores. He wanted every song to take you on a journey, to create a mood and an atmosphere that you couldn't get anywhere else. That cinematic quality became Travis Scott's calling card. If Rodeo was the proof of concept, Birds and the Trap Sing McKnight was where Mike Dean and Travis Scott perfected the formula. Dropped on September 2nd, 2016, Birds debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 88,000 album equivalent units in its first week. This was Travis's first number 1 album, and once again Mike Dean was all over it. Mike had production credits on Goosebumps, Pick Up the Phone, Coordinate, and Through the Late Night. But here's what most people don't know: Mike Dean was also the one who convinced Travis to embrace the auto-tune, heavy, melodic style that would become his signature sound. In an interview with Variety, Mike explained that he encouraged Travis to stop trying to be a traditional rapper and lean into the atmospheric, psychedelic vibe that felt more natural to him. That advice changed everything. Travis stopped competing with lyrical rappers and started creating experiences. And the numbers don't lie. Goosebumps has over 2 billion streams on Spotify. Pick Up the Phone has over 1.2 billion streams. These weren't just songs. They were cultural moments, and Mike Dean was the architect behind all of them. But Mike Dean wasn't just working on Travis's solo albums. He was also producing and mixing Travis's features, his collaborations, even his loosies and throwaways. According to Genius, between 2015 and 2018, Mike Dean worked on over 40 Travis Scott tracks. That's an insane level of dedication to one artist. Then came Astroworld, dropped on August 3rd, 2018. Astroworld wasn't just Travis Scott's best album, it was a cultural phenomenon. It debuted at number 1 with 537,000 album equivalent units, the second best debut of 2018, behind Drake's Scorpion. It spawned one of the biggest hits of the decade with Sicko Mode, which peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. And once again, Mike Dean was the mastermind behind the sound. Mike Dean had production credits on Stargazing, Carousel, Sicko Mode, Stop Trying to Be God, and multiple other tracks. But more importantly, he mixed and mastered the entire album. Every vocal, every synthesizer, every bass drop, Mike Dean shaped how all of it sounded. Let's talk about Sicko Mode for a second, because that song is a masterclass in production. It has 3 different beat switches, features from Drake and Sway Lee, and a structure that completely defies traditional songwriting. Most producers would have told Travis that the song was too chaotic, that it needed to be simplified for radio play. But Mike Dean did the opposite. He leaned into the chaos and helped Travis create something that had never been done before in mainstream hip-hop. The result? Sicko Mode became Travis's first number 1 single as a lead artist. It was nominated for Best Rap Performance and Best Rap Song at the Grammys. It's been certified diamond by the RIAA, meaning it's sold over 10 million units, and it's been streamed over 3 billion times on Spotify alone. But here's what makes Mike Dean's contribution even more impressive. While Travis was getting all the credit and all the headlines, Mike was still in the background, barely getting acknowledged. In a tweet that's since been deleted, Mike Dean expressed frustration about how producers don't get the same recognition as artists, even though they're often the ones doing most of the creative heavy lifting.
I don't have anything to prove, you know? What motivates you? Like, what keeps you going at this point?
Just making good music.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling of making good music, you know?
So how exactly does Mike Dean work with Travis Scott? What's the process that creates these massive hits? Well, thanks to a few behind the scenes interviews and studio footage, we actually know quite a bit about how these two collaborate. First off, Mike Dean is known for being a perfectionist. He'll spend hours tweaking a single snare drum or adjusting the reverb on a vocal. In an interview with Pensado's Place, Mike revealed that he often does 50 to 100 different versions of a mix before settling on the final one. That level of obsessive detail is what separates good production from a legendary production. Second, Mike and Travis have developed a creative shorthand over the years. Travis will come up with a vibe or a concept, and Mike instinctively knows how to translate that into sound. In studio footage from the Astroworld sessions, you can see Travis humming melodies or describing the feeling he wants, and Mike immediately starts building it out with synthesizers and drums.
Sure what it took, baby mama cover Forbes, got these other bitches shook, yeah.
Third, Mike Dean is a master of collaboration. He doesn't just work with Travis in isolation, he brings in other producers like Wonder Girl, Tay Keith, and Hit Boy, and then acts as the conductor, making sure all their contributions fit together seamlessly. That's why Travis Scott albums sound so cohesive despite having 15 to 20 different producers on them. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Despite all his contributions to Travis Scott's success, Mike Dean isn't exclusive to Travis. He's also been working with Kanye West on every album since 2010, including Yeah, Jesus is King and Donda. He's produced for Jay-Z, Beyonce, Kid Cudi, and dozens of other artists. So how does he find the time to dedicate so much energy to Travis? According to people close to the situation, Mike Dean sees Travis as more than just another client. He sees him as a creative partner and maybe even a protege. In a rare interview with Complex, Mike said that working with Travis reminds him of working with Kanye in the early 2000s, that same hunger, that same willingness to experiment and take risks. By 2019, Mike Dean's influence on Travis Scott had created a ripple effect across the entire hip-hop industry. Young producers were trying to recreate that spacey, atmospheric sound. Artists were hiring Mike Dean specifically because they wanted their music to sound like Astroworld. The synthesizer-heavy psychedelic style that Mike pioneered with Travis had become the blueprint for modern hip-hop. But Mike Dean wasn't resting on his laurels. He continued to push Travis in new directions. On songs like Highest in the Room and The Scotts, Mike experimented with even more aggressive synthesizers and distorted vocals. He was constantly evolving the sound, making sure Travis never became predictable or stale. And the results speak for themselves. Highest in the Room debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The Scotts, Travis's collaboration with Kid Cudi, also debuted at number 1. These weren't just hits, they were statements. They proved that Mike Dean's production style could adapt to any trend or any era. But here's what's really fascinating. Despite being one of the most successful and influential producers in modern music, Mike Dean has remained relatively underground. He doesn't have millions of followers on social media. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He doesn't create flashy marketing campaigns. He just focuses on the music, on the craft, on making every song as perfect as possible. Then came the long wait for Utopia. For nearly 5 years, Travis Scott teased his next album, promising that it would be his magnum opus. And once again, Mike Dean was right there in the studio, helping bring that vision to life. When Utopia finally dropped on July 28, 2023, it was everything fans had hoped for and more. It debuted at number 1 with 496,000 album equivalent units. It featured collaborations with Beyonce, The Weeknd, Playboi Carti, and a dozen other superstars, and it showcased Mike Dean's production range like never before. On tracks like Hyena and Thank God, Mike went full experimental, incorporating elements of industrial music, techno, and even classical music. On Meltdown and Fame, he created aggressive, hard-hitting beats that felt designed for stadium performances, and on I Know, he stripped everything back, creating this haunting minimalist soundscape that proved he could do restraint just as well as maximalism. Critics loved it. Rolling Stone called it Travis's most ambitious work yet. Pitchfork gave it an 8.0, and fans couldn't get enough of it. Multiple tracks from Utopia charted in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 simultaneously. But once again, Mike Dean's name was buried in the credits. While Travis did million-dollar brand deals and headlined festivals, Mike was back in the studio, already working on the next project. So let's talk about Mike Dean's legacy, because at this point, his impact on hip-hop is undeniable. He's worked on over 20 Grammy-nominated albums. He's produced and mixed some of the biggest hits of the last 2 decades, and he's been the secret weapon behind Travis Scott's entire career. But here's what makes Mike Dean truly special. He's never chased trends, he's never sold out, He's stayed true to his artistic vision, and he's helped artists like Travis Scott do the same. In an industry that's obsessed with quick hits and viral moments, Mike Dean represents something different: longevity, craftsmanship, and artistic integrity. According to interviews with people who've worked with Mike, he's the same guy now that he was 30 years ago. He still spends 16-hour days in the studio. He still obsesses over every detail. He still treats every project like it could be his last. And Travis Scott knows how lucky he is to have Mike Dean in his corner. In a rare moment of public gratitude, Travis tweeted in 2021 that Mike Dean is the greatest of all time and that he couldn't have built his career without him. Fast forward to 2024, and Mike Dean and Travis Scott are still working together. Mike has production credits on Travis's recent features and collaborations. They're reportedly already in the studio working on Travis's next album, and based on everything we've seen so far, there's no reason to think they'll stop anytime soon. But Mike Dean's influence extends far beyond just Travis Scott. He's become a mentor to a new generation of producers. Artists like Wonder Girl, Jahan Sweet, and Nick D have all cited Mike Dean as a major influence on their sound. His techniques for mixing and synthesizer programming have become industry standard. In recent interviews, Mike has started opening up more about his creative process. He's done tutorials on YouTube, he's shared behind the scenes footage on Instagram, and he's even started his own record label to help develop young talent. It seems like after decades of staying in the shadows, Mike Dean is finally ready to step into the spotlight. So, what can we learn from the story of Mike Dean and Travis Scott? Well, for one, success in the music industry isn't just about talent. It's about finding the right collaborators, people who believe in your vision and are willing to put in the work to make it a reality. Travis Scott didn't become a superstar on his own. He had Mike Dean in his corner, shaping his sound, pushing him to take risks, and making sure every song was as polished as possible. And Mike Dean didn't become a legend by chasing clout or credit. He became a legend by focusing on the craft, by treating every project like it mattered, and by never compromising his artistic standards. Together, they created some of the most influential music of the last decade. They changed the sound of hip-hop. They proved that experimentation and commercial success don't have to be mutually exclusive, and they built a partnership that will probably be studied in music schools for generations to come. Mike Dean is the producer that made Travis Scott unstoppable, and now that you know his name, you'll never be able to unhear his influence on modern hip-hop.